Thank you all again so much for joining us for the Center for Global Engagement's Engage Your World Speaker Series. I'm so excited to have Mr. CB Toney with us here this evening, diplomat in residence here for our region. We've been chatting before today's event, and let me tell you, this dude's got some really great stories. And so I'm really excited to hear what he's going to share with us tonight. But before we get into that, I just want to go ahead and do some introductions, talk a little bit more about Engage Your World. So my name is Michelle Lawson. I am the CGE Programs Coordinator, and I oversee the Engage Your World Speaker Series. And so this series focuses on bringing scholars and practitioners together on matters of global importance. And the hope is that we can learn more about the world around us and recognize opportunities to learn from each other and recognize opportunities to explore the world, as we're going to hear more about tonight. So some rules for Zoom. You have the chat is open and available for folks. We will have some time throughout the presentation for people to ask questions and to ask questions either directly. We'll get a chance to, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can ask your question directly, or you can just pop it in the chat. If you would like to remain anonymous, you can send the message directly to Amani Lewis, who is here on the call with us as well, and she will read out your question for you. And just because we are on Zoom, I always got to make sure we say any disruption in the form of inappropriate language or images is strictly prohibited and will not be tolerated. So I will go ahead and post all of what I said in the chat as well, so that we have it there for reference. So I said I'm very excited to introduce and welcome Mr. CB Toney, who's our region's diplomat in residence for the Department of State. He joined the U.S. Foreign Service in 1987 and currently serves as the diplomat in residence, currently housed over at FAMU. He recruits for the U.S. State Department in the Southeast region, covering Northern Florida, Southern Alabama, Southern Georgia. Before that, he most recently served as the principal officer at the Consulate General Peshawar, Pakistan, in 2019 to 2020. He has held assignments as the Senior Human Resources Officer at the American Embassy in Nairobi, Kenya, and Management Officer in Iraq and Pakistan. Other assignments include Chief of the Civilian Observer Unit of the Multinational Force and Observers in Egypt, management positions in Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Brazil, and security officer roles in Thailand and Sudan. In Washington, he also served as the Operations Center and Washington Field Office of the Diplomatic Security Service. He was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and worked for the Salvation Army, providing emergency relief services throughout Kansas and Missouri, participating in varsity athletics, student government, civic organizations. While in college, he interned in the Missouri Senate, moving to Washington, D.C., thereafter interning with the 99th Congress and Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. He has earned his degrees from Marymount University, HR Management Masters, University of Southern California, Masters of Public Administration, and a Bachelor of Social Work from Central Missouri University. He has studied languages at the Foreign Service Institute, including French, Dari, and Portuguese. Oh, what an impressive resume. I'm so excited. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to CB and he can take us away.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that warm introduction and for the center having me speak with you all today. It's truly an honor to spend quality time with you. As I read through some of the reasons people are actually attending, it's clear that you're making a true impact there at the center, getting people together, talking about very key and relevant events and details that's going on around the world. That is not only here domestically, but also with an international focus, preparing yourselves for some of that work on an international stage. So the work that you're doing is so key to preparing us for future engagement with the world. So I appreciate you again, your efforts, as well as you and our colleagues there for hosting me. And so I wanted to thank you all for sending such amazing questions and talking points to me even before the talk. It shows that you're prepared for the next layer of leadership at State Department, because you think through, well, how can I actually get there, and what will I do when I arrive? And so one of the areas that you all had expressed interest in speaking with me about, of course, these comments are off the record, uh, concerns my entry into the State Department, as well as what I've been doing for the last 35 years or so. And so I always like to start with my time. Michelle spoke about my time in Missouri. I grew up in Missouri. I was a product of a single parent household. I also spent time in foster care as an award of the state of Missouri. So I usually joke with my colleagues about how I went from uh, the being a ward of a state to the State Department. Because at the age of 20, I graduated from college and moved to Washington, working on Capitol Hill. And then at 21, I joined the State Department. And so my time, I believe, on Capitol Hill, working as an intern, as well as my time in the state capitol, truly prepared me for some of the work that I have done within the State Department. I actually draw from those experiences every day, those internship experiences. So I'm a big proponent of internships, and I would highly recommend that you explore internships. Today we have virtual internships where you can actually work in an office for 10 hours a week without leaving your dorm room. And so the access to internships and experience, gaining experience before joining government is readily available to you. So highly recommend looking at our State Department internships. We also offer fellowships for those who are interested in doing a master's degree and then joining the State Department as well. So our internships and fellowships are available to you. So after my time in as an intern and then moving into the State Department, my first assignment, I actually came in the Foreign Service as as a diplomatic security agent based in Washington. So I spent 3 years there, and then finally my first assignment was at their embassy in Khartoum, Sudan, as a special agent. And then I worked through for about 10 years within diplomatic security. And I thought, because I also had an interest in management, that I would go back to school, and that's what I did. And so a lot of people ask me, well, should you graduate from university with a degree and then move on to a master's degree immediately thereafter? Should I wait? I waited 10 years. While going to school, I received, I also worked full time. I went to school for a double master's, finished that in a year while working. So finished that off, and then my career took a dramatic turn to more management roles, leaving security behind, and that was 25 years ago. When I switched to more management roles. Since that time, it's been an amazing, even before, but since moving into more management roles, it's been an incredible career working with diverse populations around the world through work at embassies and consulates, to the point where coming in as more like an entry level officer, I've worked my way up to some of the most senior ranks that we have, taking on some of the most senior positions that we have at the State Department, with, as Michelle mentioned, culminating with my current or my most recent posting as principal officer at Consulate General Peshawar, my second tour there. Consulate General Peshawar is one of the most remote posts that we have in the world. It actually borders the Afghan border, about 27 miles from the Afghan border, through the Khyber Pass, and then straight on the cobble. So not only is it remote, it's one of the most difficult posts that we have. But we were talking about how does it that one gets through a day when dealing with such remote and dangerous postings. It really is the collaboration with colleagues and friends that become friends, as well as the host government, working together we call it in Dari, Shona by Shona, shoulder by shoulder, getting the job done. So it is a remarkable time when you actually have that magic happen with teammates where you're working together and getting the job done. So these days I'm domestic. We have 16 different diplomats and residents across America. I cover the Southeast region. North Florida is an amazing region with incredible talent, people like you who are interested in international relations and international affairs. I also cover Southern Georgia and Southern Alabama, and those places are equally dynamic, looking to join us. So when we look at the skill level, one of the questions that came in early on, uh, you asked, well, what types of degrees, focus levels would be best when joining the State Department? What are the degree requirements for our higher salaries and positions? So when we look at the State Department, there are so many different ways to join state. One could come in as a foreign service officer, working within our 5 disciplines: the counselor cone or track, career track, political, economic, management. That's the track that I like so much, and I've worked in, served as management officer 4 times, as well as the public affairs. If you come in that way, there's a Foreign Service Officer exam that one can sign up for. That exam is given 3 times a year. It's given February, June, and October. So we just finished a session most recently, and then we have another session coming up. Interestingly enough, you don't necessarily need to have a degree, a upper management or upper degree, or a bachelor's or master's or a doctorate to take the Foreign Service Officer exam. The only thing that's required is a high school diploma, that you're at least 20 years old to take the exam, you're a US citizen. Those are the requirements. You take the exam, there's a process of evaluation, and then there's an oral assessment, security clearance, medical clearance, and you're in. So to join the Foreign Service that way, no degree is required, only a diploma. So if you're 20 and at least 20 and you're not older, you're no older than 59 and a half, then go ahead and throw your hat in the ring by taking the exam. Now, we also have specialties. I came in as a specialist. Diplomatic security is a specialty cone or track, career track. And so it was required to have a degree as well as a year's worth of experience to gain a role. So all of our specialties may have a degree component to join, as well as certain the degree component, as well as certain experience requirements as well. And so the short answer is, if you have skill, and we'll talk about the different skills that we look for at the State Department. If you have skill and you're interested in international working in the international stage, then the State Department has a job for you, because not only do we have our foreign service, we also have our civil service. Those positions may not require a degree once you're in. Um, you could actually join the civil service working as an intern at the age of 16, and then work your way through to permanent status. And so some of those roles do require a degree, some of them don't. So if you're interested in working domestically on international issues with hopes of joining the Foreign Service later on, then you may also want to look at the civil service. The civil service, you apply through usajobs.gov, and then look at a job that you're interested in, apply, and get in that way. A lot of the jobs are in Washington, but we have several roles that are passport agencies around the country as well. So there's the State Department is broken up in civil and foreign service um, positions. For the civil service, it's usajobs.gov for the application process, and then for the foreign service, you can come in as a generalist or a specialist depending on your career interests. And the specialists, most don't require an exam, just a resume review, and the generalists do require an exam that we again offer 3 times per year. So that was again a very good question about working with the department and what are the requirements. So there was a question about language. We actually have a limited appointment, so a 5-year appointment based on language skill of Arabic, Mandarin, Chinese Mandarin, Spanish, or Portuguese. So if you have one of those languages and you have a proficiency in one of those languages, you could actually come in as one of our counselor fellows, which is a limited appointment that allows you to work in a very busy counselor section where your language skills are desperately needed. So there are other ways of joining the State Department as a LNA on a limited appointment, or you may want to look at working with one of the large contractors that provide staff to the State Department as contractors as well. So not only do you have the counselor fellows, it's limited appointments, you may want to look at the contract way of getting in to the State Department. Another very good question when it comes to getting in, because there's really no cookie cutter approach to joining the State Department. You can try a lot of different ways of joining. A lot of my colleagues came into the Foreign Service or the State Department as a civil service, worked for a number of years, and then transitioned into the Foreign Service. And they took on, at the end of their career, some of the most important roles that we've had at the organization. So when the question came in my experience, is there a typical path that people take when working in the field of diplomacy? No, it's almost like the old saying, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And it's practice, practice, practice. So the more you do something, the better off you are in trying and attempting to get in to the State Department or other federal agencies. I have the pleasure of speaking with hundreds, maybe thousands so far of would-be applicants for different State Department roles. And just about every week I receive notes from them, from former people that I've spoken with, saying that they made it in to their oral exam, and they're going to take their oral exams. Or I just received a message about a counselor fellow just today, and they said that they were successful in making it through. So this is a tried and true way of getting in. You have to the State Department. You have to try to put the application in order to be successful. You have to be in it to win it. So why don't I stop there for other questions? I know Michelle had some questions that, and the team have some questions that they want to pitch. Why don't we stop there and ask for those questions?
Certainly. And if anyone does have a question, we just ask that you want to ask it directly, just raise your hand in Zoom, and then we can unmute your microphone for you. Otherwise,
no, I do have another one that was sent ahead. If you want me to ask this one or answer this one, I'm happy to address this question as well.
Sure, that sounds good.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So the question was, what are some experience and the skills that will help a candidate stand out? For example, does it help to already have certain languages or language? So I always use my example, myself as an example. When I started, I didn't have any language skill whatsoever. I did take Spanish. I believe it was in junior high school. So I had a little bit of Spanish, not very much in junior high school. When I joined as a specialist, uh, I waited until my first assignment to Brasilia to take on Portuguese. And so I did an intensive course in Portuguese at the Foreign Service Institute, the world-renowned Foreign Service Institute at FSI, or the Foreign Service Institute in Arlington, Virginia. We learned languages, about just about every language one could experience. We use. We teach at FSI for postings at one of our 276 postings worldwide. I also studied French before going to Dakar, Senegal. In Dakar, Senegal, I was responsible for all HR management for all of our embassies and our consulates on the west coast of Africa, as well as uh, um, some of the posts in the center of Africa. About 10 countries that I covered. I was always on the road, loved it. But I managed to use my French as well as my Portuguese in during those postings. So we truly do use the language that we were taught at the Foreign Service Institute. And then going back to Afghanistan my second time, I learned Dari to head our office, our rule of law office at the embassy in Kabul. Of course, these days our embassy in Kabul operations have been suspended for the moment. But during that time, I spent time traveling around Afghanistan using my Dari. They also speak Pashtun there, but I don't speak Pashtun very well. But I managed to travel around the country and speak to different governors, mayors, and chief justices about rule of law across Afghanistan. We had PA&E, a large contractor, provided us lawyers, and they were in place. But my role was to assist the Afghan government to across the country to improve its rule of law execution for the benefit of the local Afghan citizens. So I did use my Dari there quite a bit as well. It is languages, linguists around the table will know languages are perishable. So if you don't use them, you do lose them. So when we look at hiring new individuals into the State Department, we don't necessarily require a language unless you're talking about the Counselor Fellows program. Languages for both the specialist and generalist tracks are not required. So you come in, and the first couple of tours are usually overseas. You would gain in the generalist track, you would gain a working proficiency, professional proficiency in a language before you're tenured. As a specialist, languages aren't required, but you also gain a proficiency in language depending on the country of assignment. And once you have that language, then you're good for your entire career. No one will ever ask you again about your language requirement once you're off a language probation. For our generalist teammates, they go right into the workforce after being tenured without requiring another language. Of course, another posting may require some kind of language, but for retention on the job, language wouldn't necessarily be required. So it's good to have another language, I believe. If you're responsible for traveling around the world, it is a worldwide organization, which for the needs of the service, you could be called up and sent to any place in the world. Right now, there are no forced assignments. People normally bid on a position and then they go. But it's good to have a language, because once you're in and you're settled in a region, because you become the expert for that particular region, And you're called upon, certain regional bureaus or even governments will call upon the State Department to assign someone in a particular area because of their reputation and their overall skill knowledge about a certain area, which normally includes the language as well as the knowledge of a language and knowledge of culture. And so it's good to actually have a language. You can build your career around a language skill set and truly benefit from the different tours of duty. Since arriving at the State Department at the age of 21, I've had several tours, upwards of 18 different assignments within the State Department all over the world. One assignment in the Western Hemisphere, Brasilia, and I also had 3 assignments in Africa, both the west and east portions of Africa, and then across the Middle East. It's been really my biggest concentration, working from the Sinai down to the Southeast Asia or South Asia at Pakistan, and then one tour in South Asia or Southeast Asia at the embassy in Bangkok, Thailand. The only place I haven't yet had an assignment, a full on assignment, is Europe. I've spent my time in those other places rather than Europe. So when we talk about experiences and skill sets to bring to bear when thinking about joining the State Department, what stands out? We call it the 13 dimensions for the Foreign Service Officer qualifications. We think in terms of composure, the ability to stay calm and poised and effective in very stressful situations or difficult situations, being able to think on your feet, adjusting quickly to challenging situations, and just to maintain self-control. And I think about my time in Iraq when before we moved into our new embassy most recently. We operated out of an old palace that Saddam Hussein had as part of his portfolio. And every day we would have not only threats of bombings, but there would be targeted attacks on the embassy, and bombs would be going off every day. And so that was a very stressful situation, but keeping the troops, keeping our colleagues calm and composed during that very difficult time helped us to regain our footing there and build a new embassy that we're currently operating out of today. So without the ability to maintain a presence, number one, but then number two, being very calm and composed, really helped further our strategic goals of maintaining a presence in Iraq. Cultural adaptability. I mean, everyone around the table has an interest in culture, overseas culture, which is great. I applaud you for that. Now, being an inquisitive person really does help you become a very good candidate for the State Department, because we like people that ask questions, that always have an inquisitive mind, always thinking about learning something new. So cultural adaptability is key to that, because we can, as I mentioned, we can be sent anywhere in the world. One of our 276 posts, as well as other places that are off our actually map that we're present at, and being able to have a dialogue with that host country, with the people there, furthering our strategic goals and objectives, will be why you're retained, why you're hired. The ability to just go and do and adapt and be successful is key. So working and communicating effectively and with harmony with people of other cultures, value systems, it's very likely that you'll run into some folks that leaders who are really creative. That they may say some fascinating things to you, and no matter what your personal beliefs are, the ability to do business with those people, those leaders, even though the um, the leadership may be speaking some things that we normally would hold inside using our inside voice, and they're actually saying it. Being able to deal with those kind of populations, those kind of those leaders, key to success. So cultural adaptability um, is vital. Experience and motivation. Wow, that really hits it home. Why are you interested in working for the State Department, for government, for public service? When they asked me that question, oh, well, 37 years ago, before I was hired, it was very clear to me that my passion remains then and now on serving people, assisting people to not only realize their current dreams, but their aspirations for the future. That inspires me every day, particularly when you do it on a domestic stage for the American people, for the country that I love, the greatest country on earth. And I represent that overseas. And so for me, my motivation is very clear. It has never wavered. That the core reasons I joined the State Department uh, continues to be service to our domestic audience, as well as our citizens, as well as an overseas audience, helping all to be the very best that we could possibly be. Um, they say living the best version of ourselves every day, and so that's my since joining. That's been my experience, and my motivation has not changed or wavered. So when you're asked that question, you should be able to articulate exactly why. On any employer will want to know why you want to join our organization. And so having a very good response to that question is key, I believe, to success. So experience, motivation, information, integration, and analysis, taking a lot of information and boiling it down and being able to present it on the fly is another thing we look for. We look for people that can think on their feet with a lot of information and be able to present it to the to principals, to higher management about what you believe the direction we should take as a as a government, as a people. And then I also talk a little bit about initiative and leadership. When we have um, leadership and management um, experiences, and you grow from those experiences, it's key when you're asked that question. Well, what is your leadership style? Being able to talk about your leadership style, where that came from, and how it's executed. What does it look like? Goes the difference when either being retained, or once you're in the organization, it will determine your success within the organization. Just last Friday, I had the privilege, or actually, uh, last Friday, I had the privilege of talking with our newest hires, 133 newest State Department employees. And they were asking me, the questions were about leadership and management, and the importance of good leadership principles. And so I spent the hour and a half talking with them, along with two other colleagues, about our journeys in good leadership and what we thought good management looked like. And we received great response from that group. It shows that people were really interested in not only getting into the State Department, but they wanted to know how to become successful managers and leaders. So in your coursework, in your communities, if you're working, if you're volunteering, I highly recommend focusing on areas that will highlight and improve your leadership and your management skills, because it could be very possible when you apply for a position, you go through the various steps and you get in. Like I attended our Flag Day ceremony yesterday virtually, where all of our colleagues who were just hired, they received their very first posting overseas and domestic postings as well. And it was such an emotional event for me and everyone looking on, as we remembered when we also had our first Flag Days, going out and serving America abroad, and the hope and all that aspiration was bottled up in that event yesterday for the next generation of leaders, which we hope at the State Department will include some of you around this table who also may be interested. So I'll stop there and ask if there are other questions that have popped in.
Absolutely. Thank you. I believe Samantha, we had a question. If you're comfortable going ahead, I will unmute you. If you could also introduce yourself before asking your question.
Hi, my name is Samantha Buckley, and I'm a staff member at the FSU College of Medicine. And I know this is kind of a broad question, but I kind of wanted to learn more about what the day-to-day work of these various postings that you mentioned, like the Foreign Service Officer, Civil Service, and especially the Counselor Fellowship.
Thank you so much for that, Samantha. So I can start with the Counselor Fellowship, which is a limited appointment LNA, which means you have 5 years to work within state. And then normally within that 5-year period, folks are applying for a full-time job. So we take employees who are on limited appointments, and we do hire them. So it's a great way to get into to the State Department. So for the Council Fellows on an LNA, what they do every day, particularly in our counselor sections, they assist. They're like every other employee. They assist in issuing visas for individuals who are interested in visiting America, or traveling to America to migrate. And so we have our NIV, our non-immigrant visa, and as well as our immigrant visas that they work on. So they'll interview would-be immigrants, or also those who are interested in just traveling to see Nikki, like in Orlando. And so they spend their day, they are our front line when it comes to those who are traveling to the state. So if travelers can get through the visa interview and have a visa and make their way to the States, those employees who work that visa line are critical. They play a major role in protecting our borders. And there's also within that same office, if you've traveled overseas, maybe you lost your passport or needed help from an embassy or a consulate, they work as American Citizen Services employees. So they address the issues of you, the American public, who travel, that need assistance with passports. They may have had a birth abroad, so registering a baby, or sadly maybe even a death abroad. They handle all the American citizen cases, like we have mayors or local county offices. All those offices are enclosed in an embassy through the American Citizen Services desk. So that's a bit about the Counselor Fellows program. And then there are the civil service roles, which the Secretary of State Blinken and I believe that the civil service roles are just equal halves of the State Department. Those roles are critical, providing all of the policy and the program development for the State Department on the domestic side of the house, receiving information from overseas, putting it into policy, and having it championed through the Secretary of State, Congress, and administration. So those officers are critical on the domestic front because they serve as the back office, the continuity of the State Department. Because as I'll mention with the Foreign Service officers, we transfer every couple of 3 years. And so the institutional knowledge that we have is sometimes lost on the overseas post, but it's gained domestically because it acts as our archive, as our clearinghouse, basically, for all of our policies, all of our programs that direct and guide overseas offices. Because remember that the president will send an ambassador to a particular country. The ambassador is a personal representative of the president in a nation, and the ambassador is the highest ranking U.S. official in a country, putting all of our country team members, that's everyone that operates out of the embassy, every agency that operates out of an embassy, they ensure that we coordinate all activities through the front office. The ambassador, deputy chief of mission play the coordinating in the role execution, program execution role within an embassy. And so the embassy has the front office, that's the ambassador, as well as the deputy chief of mission. And then surrounding the ambassador and chief of mission, we have the country team members or section heads of the embassy that deal with consular, economic, political, public affairs, and management, as well as the our other colleagues from different agencies that operate out of the embassy. They're considered to be section heads as well, and so we all work together in the various policies and procedures that we've been given from the administration to operate overseas and execute our policies vis-a-vis the country that we're actually assigned. And so that engagement with the host government is a daily event. And actually daily when I say Monday through Sunday, because it's not unusual to receive a call from your counterpart about something going on within a country after hours. And you have to troubleshoot that problem no matter what day, no matter what hour of the day. So we are the go-betweens between the American people and the hosting country officials dealing with the areas that I've already spoken about. That engagement really looks like in normal times, it looks like meetings that we have with those interlocutors. These days, we have a lot of meetings about COVID and the impact on societies, because as you well know, travel and transportation between countries, it's governed by those international agreements. And so dealing with COVID through our USAID colleagues and international community partners with the host government, we try to address getting the vaccines over. During my time in Peshawar, I worked with the local government and our ARD colleagues to get ventilators sent to the hospitals across Peshawar. I also spent time with the health professionals and the health ministry, providing training to doctors and nurses and health practitioners across the district, ensuring that good health protocols were in place to combat COVID. So my time there, since it was the beginning of COVID, it was really spent working with the host government to improve their healthcare system, the delivery system for the people of the northwest part of Pakistan. In non-emergency times, our time is spent dealing what we call the integrated country strategy. It's a strategy that we've all agreed to as a country team, that programs that we'll be using or doing in a particular part of the country. And we're working with our colleagues within the embassy to get those programs done throughout the year, as well as resources needed to have effective programs. So the people part of the equation, making sure we have people and professionals in different roles to make sure that we're able to execute our mandate, the president's mandate, the secretary of state's mandate, through to the ambassador's mandate for a particular country. So leading that endeavor on a normal day, we have a lot of professionals around our table from all the different agencies It's a task because we want the best you, the American people, have paid for our salaries. We want the best possible outcome from our international involvement within various countries, and so it takes a lot of time and willpower to ensure that we have a concise and a collaborative approach to our mission execution. And that just takes time through communication with internal interlocutors and a lot of meetings externally. During my time in Afghanistan, I remember spending the better part of the morning working within the embassy, speaking with Department of Defense, USAID, commerce officials, as well as our security teams on various programs rule of law programs that I was involved with. And then in the afternoon, I would spend a large amount of my time with the Minister of Health, the Minister of Labor, as well as Law, the MOI, the Ministry of Interior officials, Ministry of Justice officials. And then in the evening, I would take all the information that I had learned and then have briefings with the State Department as well as the White House Situation Room. It was a full-on job, but when it comes to communication and our role, the biggest part of the day is spent in meetings and reporting that information back to Washington in order to make some decisions about our various programs operating around the 276 or so places that we operate out of. Great question. Thank you, Samantha. Michelle, did other questions come in as well?
Oh, yes. Imani, do you have some on your end that you would like to ask?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that response, Mr. Toney. I have a lot of different questions coming in for you. The first one that I have is, if someone wants to become a diplomat in residence, is that something that can happen early in the career, or is it best to get more experience before applying?
Imani, that is a great question, because I asked that same question when I first joined the State Department. Ambassador Perkins, you may remember Ambassador Perkins was the first African-American ambassador to South Africa during apartheid. I had the pleasure of spending quality time with Ambassador Perkins during my time in Mozambique. I went over and had lunch with he and the team at Pretoria. We as an African-American traveler, I was of course under the restrictions of apartheid there in South Africa. So after leaving Maputo, and then after the ambassador left South Africa, he relocated in Washington as our Director General, the highest official HR official dealing with the Foreign Service and Civil Service. So no one can have an assignment, no one can gain an assignment, no one can be moved without the Director General, his or her signature. So in this case, it was Ambassador Perkins. I asked to have a meeting with him there in DC, and we had a great conversation. But in my conversation with him, I asked, I'd been on by this time about 5 years or so, I'd asked, I'd love to become a diplomat in residence, sir. I see it's one of the positions that we have around the country, and I'd be honored to serve. And he looked straight at me and said, CB, I think you need a bit more seasoning before taking on such a role. And so fast forward 30 years, here I am in a diplomat in residence position. And so I took his advice and gained some experience, both domestically and internationally. And I use that experience hopefully to inspire some of you to think in terms of joining the State Department. And then once you're in, I think you'll find that domestic work is fascinating, depending on what you have going family-wise, if experience-wise, where you hope that your career will go. But there are some of us that really value overseas work. So this being the first time I've had a domestic assignment in 25 years, I truly valued my time overseas, engaging with our local nationals, local employees who work and serve overseas at our different embassies from a different place and consulates that are from those areas. I thoroughly enjoyed spending quality time there. I received messages from them, former colleagues, all the time. Some of them have actually moved to America as our SIV candidates, so special immigrant visa candidates, and they've now relocated to the States, and they call me all the time, and we have great conversations. And so I think for some of us, we really value our overseas experience to the point where we spend the majority of our time overseas, but then these jobs domestically are fantastic. The 16 roles that we have around the country allow us to get out and speak with you, the American people, as well as those who are interested in joining State Department or government roles, using our stories to inspire you to think about public service on an international stage, working with the State Department. No greater honor, I think, as an employee, as a colleague at State, than bringing in and talking to the next generation of leaders at State Department. And we hope that you'll be inspired to serve your nation at home as well as abroad. And if once you're done with your overseas assignments for a bit, take a pause and work domestically, I would highly recommend the diplomat in residence role, because it really does allow, even with COVID, connectivity with you, the next generation of American leaders at the State Department.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you,
The
Marty.
next question that I have for you is, how strict are the medical clearances to become a foreign service officer? Is taking regular medication an automatic disqualification?
Great question, Amani. So we have on our website, careers.state.gov, all the information you need to know and more about the medical clearance process. But we have varying clearances, various clearances that we have, the medical clearance, and then the level within those clearances. So you could have a class 1 clearance through a class 5 clearance. The class 1 clearance is the highest one can have. But if you just happen to have a medical issue that involves medication, you may have a class 1 clearance and you may have a class 2 clearance. It's hard to say. But if you have a class 2 clearance, you can still go to certain places around the world. You just can't go to every place. And so we believe in reasonable accommodation for all of our employees. We realize life does happen, and over a period of time, we may develop health issues. And if you haven't, knock on wood, you won't. But if you do, we have great medical advancements in America. I mean, that's one of the gifts that we've given to the world. Some of our medical advancements, some of the things that are happening now are just mind-blowing. And so, yes, we believe in a reasonable accommodation. There's plenty of information about the medical clearance process, but that should not stop you from applying at the State Department. Again, we believe in reasonable accommodation for all, and so one should apply irrespective of their if they have medical challenges or not.
Definitely. Thank you for that. The next question that was sent to me is, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I believe Tania has a quick question as well. If you don't mind if we jump in, Monty.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, so previously you mentioned, besides directly applying to the State Department to get a job, you also mentioned possibly getting in through major contractors. And would you mind expanding on that more? Because I've heard that term before, but I'm not too familiar, so.
No, great, Tamia. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, there are so many different ways of joining government. You have the direct approach, you have the test, and then you have oral assessment. You come in that pathway. We actually have something called the Pathway internship, as well as Pathway recent graduate program the recent graduate program, Pathway Recent Graduate Program. If you're graduating this spring or summer or fall, congratulations to you for getting through your degrees. But you have 2 years of eligibility for the Pathway program. You can go right online and Google it. Pathway program is also on our website at careers.state.gov. And you can apply for those. You have 2 years of eligibility. Post-graduation, certainly try that away. They're for entry-level positions, so normally the positions allow for immediate, but for consideration for employment based on your graduation status. So as soon as you graduate, you're eligible. Normally those positions don't require too much in the way of experience. It's more about the education. So once you gain entry through the pathway, you'll have the experience to take on other roles. Now, for the contractor roles, government, typically across all government agencies, we have what we call the full-time equivalent. So FTE, and Congress sets the level with the executive, the president sets the level of amount of people that any one agency can hire over the course of a year and maintain. And so if we're at that level of hiring and we still need a critical service, then we look to some of the large scale contractors around the country to provide skilled professionals for support in various areas. And so it's interesting that you can have a full-time employee working right next to a contracted employee doing the exact same work, but it happens all across government. And so a great way of gaining experience, particularly in the IT field. We desperately need IT professionals. So if you're IT pro and you're interested in joining state, highly recommend either applying directly, or if you think you need more experience, one could work for a contractor that provides IT services and then apply to our information technology role or our information management systems role. One could do that and gain experience and then get in that away. So having that on your resume that you served along with a contractor and then would like to join the department directly, historically has been an excellent way of joining government. So yeah, highly recommend contract work. A lot of times the contract work is quite good too, because then you have the flexibility of, through a contractor, of working on multiple sites that you're interested in. Whereas in State Department, you have a bid list and you hope to be assigned or positioned in certain locations around the world. So contractors do help you pinpoint the places that you have of interest, maybe a language, maybe you have some understanding because you traveled in that area before. A contractor could be used as a vehicle to work along with state without having some of the bureaucratic strings that are usually attached with working at state. But great question, Tamaya.
Thank you.
And Imani, you had another question, or did that?
Yes, I do. Sorry.
Okay.
There's a lot of submitted questions coming in.
Uh-huh. Yeah, happy to, if you like, happy to, if we don't get to all the questions, I'm happy to stay here as long as you wish, number one. But you can always send me those questions at DIR Southeast. That's DIR Southeast spelled out at state.gov, and happy to answer them.
That would be awesome. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Shall I continue with the questions?
Please, I insist.
The next question that I have for you is, what are the best opportunities within the diplomatic world at the State Department for humanitarian and human rights fields?
Wow, you're answering. Let's say you're reading my mind, because I'll put a plug in for our talk for Women's History Month next month on the 22nd of March. Make sure you get the flyer for that. We will have our Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Democracy and Human Rights and Labor, that's DIR. That bureau is responsible for championing the American values, including the rule of law, which I'm so passionate about, having served as rule of law coordinator in our embassy in Kabul, and individual rights that promote strong, stable, prosperous, and sovereign states. We advance the American security in the struggle against authoritarianism, terrorism, and we stand for the freedom of religion, speech, and the press, and the rights of people to assemble peacefully and to petition their government for redress of grievances. So that's the mantra of DRL, which again, we will have that program for Women's History Month with one of our Deputy Assistant Secretaries next month on the 22nd. And so, as you can see, we have a branch of the State Department that focuses in on nothing but democracy, human rights, and labor overseas, helping other governments and civil society members to take on more strong approaches to individual freedoms that we in America hold so dear. That's in our very civics classes around the world. Around the country, we talk about human rights and individual rights, whereas some places around the world may not. And so it's actually good that we have this group DRL that acts as our clearinghouse, our champion for instilling solid human rights practices around the world. And we work with the international community in doing just that too. We don't do it alone. We don't operate in a vacuum. We have a lot of other interlocutors at the local level, either at the host government level or in an international community level, that assist in ensuring that that human rights, the basic human rights, are respected by host governments around the world. And so it's very possible one could come in to the State Department, maybe in a generalist track, political economic officers focus on that portfolio, those portfolios when it comes to human rights and democracy and labor. But we have others as well. As a management officer, I was very keen on ensuring that we had equal opportunity for all within the society for the different jobs we had under my command. I remember a time in Peshawar, it could have been Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where a new job came up, and the job title was maintenance man. And I said, why are we still using this title as maintenance man? We should have a title that's inclusive: maintenance professional, maintenance personnel lead, something that would denote skills, not necessarily the gender of a profession. And so we changed that. We fundamentally changed how we did our outreach to include technical colleges that included women and as well as men across the district. And so even the management side of the house, we have to ensure that we ensure diversity, inclusion, and equality across our entire missions, or what we call platforms. And so at the State Department, we do just that too. We have an office that coordinates that on an international, those good initiatives on an international scale. So one could work with DRR directly. I was just on the phone with, before coming to speak with you, I was just on a phone with our DRL colleagues, and they come from a host of backgrounds. So once, if you're interested in joining that call in a 20-second, we'll make sure you get the information. You could actually speak directly with one of our highest professionals, negotiators and leaders at state that deals with that very important topic. Michelle?
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
All right, so let's see. Imani, do you have another question on your list? I know of a few on mine too.
I do. Would you like to ask yours first, Michelle, or I can ask
Oh, no,
mine?
by all means, go ahead.
Okay. The next question that I have is, what are some specific examples of work or projects you did overseas, and what were the goals that you were able to achieve with them?
Wow, that's fantastic. I love to talk about our teams overseas because it shows that we galvanize together to get things done at the very local level, which when you talk about winning hearts and minds, working at the local level is key to doing just that, because people see the host government and the American government and our partners in action to provide some relief, to provide something real for that society. So there are a lot of examples from our time in Afghanistan. I like to use our example, one of the examples from Saudi Arabia, because it's one of those situations where what we did is not only there then we benefited from the engagement with the host government then, but until now, that's our new consulate building in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I served in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia from 2006 until 2010. We had a terrorist attack months right before my arrival, and so it was very fresh on the minds of our colleagues that we needed to move from our location on Palestine Street, which used to be the old embassy at the time, until the embassy moved to Riyadh. It was interesting that during the embassy days, the Red Sea actually came to the back of the embassy. That entire area was filled with great fishing right off the back of the embassy. Over the years, the host government filled in the street, and so we lost our beachfront access. But we had been on that location for years, and it was a very cramped location, and we knew we had to move. And so when I arrived there, our efforts to successfully move to another place, or find a place to build, they had stalled for a number of reasons. Politically, the host government liked where we were located, and so they were less than helpful in assisting us in moving to a new location. And so one of the first things I do when I assume command is I get with all of our section leads and I talk about our priorities. And the number one priority at that time was finding a location for a new consulate and building it. And so that was in 2008. And so we all came together. We actually we found a place that looked good. Received the clearances, bought the property for $18 million, which if you ever carry a check for $18 million for something, it makes you feel pretty good to hand over that check. The other thing that makes one feel pretty good is to have their name in the title of a property that's overseas. And so I managed to buy this location, presented a check, and have my name in the title as well. And so we secured the property and then started building the new consulate building, which was valued at that time upwards of $250 million. So it was the largest project that I've worked on till that time, until I moved to Afghanistan. So we started the new consulate building, and I received a message years later that all things had finished, and we had moved out of the old, lowered the flag and moved out of the old consulate building into the new one. And that protected American citizens who were visiting our consulate. That protected our employees who work out of the consulate every day, and it really finalized or finished one of our most strategic goals and objectives that we had for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Once it was done, the kingdom was the leadership. They were extremely happy with us because the area now is filled with bustling businesses, which it was just desert before. Bustling businesses, as well as a safe location for the Americans to operate out of. So I think that's one that sticks out in my mind as far as a success story for the teams that I've had the pleasure of commanding overseas.
That sounds incredible. Thank you.
Welcome, Imani.
The next two questions that I have are from Francisco. And the first question is, on the topic of service, what avenues, if any, with the State Department would allow you to work on community development and aid projects abroad?
Great question, Francisco. Thank you, Imani. So AID is our premier agency that deals with development abroad. They work, of course, our AID colleagues work with State Department and other colleagues around the country team table, as well as international community, identifying areas that need resource areas that need improving on a local level. And so if you're interested in working with USAID, I'm happy to provide you with the Diplomat in Residence for AID, covers its area. Michelle, I can pass that to you. You can, if you'll like to give it to the team, happy to share that information. And so one of the things that we truly value in going through your foreign service or your State Department career is not only internal service to a community, because we have our community, our American community that lives there, the expat community, as well as the employees that work in, we're really part of a family. It's a community effort to operate and live overseas. And so having benefits, cookouts, we're celebrating Black History Month this month with various dinners and talks and presentations. Again, to the community. We'll do that next month for Women's History Month, and then again for the Arab American Heritage Month coming up in April. So we'll have these conversations to build awareness about who we are as Americans internally. Then on the external population, we truly value those employees, our colleagues, who reach out into the overall fora, who go out into the local economy and they bring attention to maybe building a school or using their skills to tutor children in a local community center. Or as you know, I did. I love basketball. I played basketball in high school, football in college, and so for one of my community service initiatives, I got together a basketball team, local kids just playing sports. And so you could use sports diplomacy, you could use connectivity to a population that needs something, using your skills, your talents to further bolster that community. It builds esprit de corps. It brings in this connectivity, people to people. Remember that as an American diplomat, you may be the only person that from America that group will ever come in contact with. So you are a representative. You're an example of what the concept of an American is. And so if you actually go and have a conversation and provide programming to an area, not only on your official time, but your private time that's clear through your supervisor and the regional security officer, then I believe that you will not only prosper as an individual, because giving makes you feel good. Giving of your time, your resources, your talent, there's such a joy in that. So not only benefiting that away, but then the American people benefit too, because you're on the front line, you're there, making a positive difference within a group's life. And they'll remember that for the rest of their lives and benefit from it, as well as a gift that keeps on giving.
Definitely. The next question that I have is, I just recently started looking at a career with the Bureau of Intelligence and Research and was wondering, would I need to take the Foreign Service Officer test to start with the INR? How would working with the INR be different from the roles of other Foreign Service officers?
Great question. Thank you, Amani. So INR is, and I've had this question before a lot recently. So there are a lot of you who are looking at joining the IC as part of the INR family. So one could take a position directly with INR. And you don't necessarily have to be in the Foreign Service. That's a civil. There are roles, INR roles, that are civil service. And then as a Foreign Service employee, you can also work with INR. I worked with a team on the watch in the Operations Center, which is a 24/7 operations center at State Department, which we every day we look at the different happenings, the cables that come in, and alert the secretary of things that happen overnight. It didn't always exist, actually. President Kennedy called over to Dean Acheson, and he couldn't get a hold of the secretary. And so the next day, the president said, "I want someone waiting by the phone. If I call, they should be able to get a hold of you." And out of that conversation grew into what we passionately call the Operations Center, which I served on. And there are members of the group, INR Watch, and others that ensure that overnight and during the day, anything that surfaces that's hot will be brought to the attention of the core principals. And so the best way to look at for INR roles domestic would be usajobs.gov. And then for the Foreign Service, if you're interested in joining, you can certainly migrate over to the INR team if that's your passion. Yeah, it's one of the key groups that we have at State, and it's considered to be a functional bureau. And so yeah, if your interests lie there, you can always again hit me up at DIR Southeast at state.gov, and I'm happy to talk with you further about a role in INR.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mr. Toney. The last question that I have for you tonight is, how long before leaving the US to an assignment would you start studying the language?
Great question. Yes, because there's a lot of juggling that goes on during the transition from one assignment to another. You have to be very patient when it comes to preparing for your onward assignment while you're trying to do your current role. In the summer, one ambassador said that this is when we all get stupid, because the new people are coming in, and the old people are that have served there for maybe 3 or 4 years, they're starting to leave. So all that great institutional knowledge goes out the door. In come fresh troops that have to learn their lines and ropes all over again. And so what I try to do, this being my 35th year, I try to balance the two roles. If it requires language, then there's going to be a language starting date If you're coming in from overseas, there's typically home leave that you have to go through as well. So you get a chance to spend your time with family and friends during home leave. And so what I usually do is space out my home leave first, making sure I'm fresh enough to absorb the language study that I'm going through, take care of the language requirement, and then um, show up at post. So typically it's about if you're assigned, let's say in November, then you'll have your orders to depart post before you leave, hopefully around March or April or so. And then you're able to start the transition of packing your goods and departing for your next post. So it's about a year for most posts. The hard language, super hard languages that we have, Chinese and Russian, they usually take about 2 years to get through. Chinese for sure takes about 2 years to get through the Chinese course. So you're assigned, let's say this year, you'll do your overall, you wrap up at your current assignment. So that's 1 year to the assignment date. You go on home leave, functional training, that's another year, 2 years of language. So it's about, you could read through the administrative lines. It's about 3 to 4 years before you actually arrive at your next post, if you happen to be a world language learner like Chinese. But typically it's about a year and you're ready to go to your next role.
That is all I have for you, Mr. Toney. Thank you.
Thank you, Amani. Appreciate you pitching those great questions. Really, I've really enjoyed the talk today, and I look forward to spending quality time with you all again next month in March. Again, feel free to email me if you'd like to have a one-on-one. Happy to have a conversation with you one-on-one as well.
And thank you so much, CB. This was really wonderful. And thank you again to everyone who asked such excellent questions. Those were really great. I really appreciated all of your participation today. As we wrap up our events, and thank you again, once again, CB, for your time today and sharing your information and your knowledge and your experience. I will also do a quick plug for our next Engage Your World Speaker Series, which is going to be on Wednesday, March 30th at 5 o'clock. We have Dr. Flavia Ramos Matusi over in the Learning Systems Institute, who will be presenting on gender equity and social inclusion and how that has worked in her work with USAID. And it's going to be a really interesting talk. So we hope that you can make it out for that. And then, of course, another plug for the other event that CB mentioned. I will make sure that we get a flyer out to everyone so that you can get those details and sign up for that event. I have included a link in the chat. If you have a second or 30 seconds to take a quick survey, let us know how today's event was, and if there's any other topics that you feel like would be really interesting and helpful for the future. But otherwise, I think that is it for today. Once again, thank you so much for everyone for joining. Thank you, CB, for sharing with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle.